Deep Work: Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World by Newport. Picture this moment with me. It's early winter, 2007. In a cozy Edinburgh home office, one of the world's most beloved authors is hitting a wall. J.K. Rowling is racing to finish the final Harry Potter book, The Deathly Hallows. The pressure is almost unbearable. Hundreds of millions of fans are waiting breathlessly. An entire generation grew up alongside Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and now she has to deliver an ending that honors everything they've shared. The weight of that entire magical world rests squarely on her shoulders, but every single time she sits down to write, something yanks her away. The window cleaner arrives with his noisy equipment. Her kids tumble home from school. Dogs bark at nothing in particular. Life's endless interruptions keep chipping away at her focus, piece by piece. She desperately needs to sink deeper into her work than ever before. But her everyday environment simply won't cooperate. So she makes a decision that most people would call extreme. She packs a bag, walks out her front door, and checks herself into a suite at the Balmoral, this gorgeous 5-star Victorian hotel right in the city's heart. She hadn't planned to stay long, just thought she'd try one day there to see what happened. But that first day of writing went so remarkably well that she kept returning. Day after day she returned to that peaceful, luxurious room, surrounded by the Gothic architecture that had inspired Hogwarts itself, and she wrote. She finally discovered the silence she desperately needed to complete the last Harry Potter book. Now you're probably thinking, well, sure, that's easy for J.K. Rowling. She can afford fancy hotel suites. But here's the thing. This story isn't really about the money. It's about the decision. It's about recognizing that in our distraction-soaked world, the ability to truly, deeply focus has become a genuine superpower. And sometimes, you have to do something radical to protect it. This very idea sits at the heart of a remarkable book by computer science professor Newport. It's called Deep Work. This isn't your typical productivity book promising 3 easy hacks. It's a guide to fundamentally transforming your relationship with work, with technology, and with your own mind. Newport noticed something that most of us feel in our bones but can't quite articulate. Our modern world seems to be in a constant conspiracy against deep thinking. Our phones, our inboxes, our open-plan offices, they're all seemingly designed to trap us in a state of frantic, shallow busyness. But here's the secret he uncovered. And this is the bold promise I'm making to you today. By the time we finish this journey together, you'll understand why the ability to do deep work is becoming simultaneously the most valuable and the rarest skill in the 21st century. You'll discover why the handful of people who cultivate this skill will absolutely thrive, leaving everyone else scrambling behind. And most importantly, you'll walk away with a clear, practical roadmap for rewiring your brain and redesigning your life to make this superpower your own. So let's begin this journey together. Let's discover how you can join the ranks of the focused few. Have you ever felt like you're just spinning your wheels? You stay busy all day long, firing off emails, jumping between meetings, checking notifications. But when the day ends, you look back and wonder, what did I actually accomplish? If that feeling resonates with you, trust me, you're far from alone. It's become the defining struggle of our modern era. And Newport argues that this struggle is creating a massive divide in both our economy and our lives. On one side of this divide are people who are steadily falling behind. Their skills are being automated or easily outsourced. They're trapped in that exhausting cycle of busyness, feeling more and more like a human router, just passing information back and forth without creating real value. But on the other side, there's a small group who aren't just surviving, they're thriving beyond anyone's wildest imagination. Newport points to people like Nate Silver, the data wizard who predicts elections with stunning accuracy by wrestling with complex computer models. He talks about David Heinemeier Hansson, the programming genius who created a framework powering massive websites like Twitter and Hulu, all while working remotely from places like Spain and Malibu. And then there are investors like John Doerr, who backed giants like Google and Amazon early on. What connects these wildly successful people? It's not just raw intelligence. They've mastered two core abilities. And these two abilities, my friend, are absolutely key to everything. The first is the ability to quickly master hard things. Our world changes at breakneck speed. The programming languages that are hot today might be obsolete within a decade. Marketing strategies that work now won't work next year. To stay valuable, you need to learn complicated stuff fast. The second is the ability to produce at an elite level in both quality and speed. Having a skill isn't enough anymore. You need to apply that skill to create things of tangible value that people can see and genuinely appreciate. So here's the billion-dollar question. How do you develop these two abilities? The answer, Newport reveals, is a single powerful practice: deep work. He defines deep work as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are incredibly hard to replicate. Imagine a blacksmith forging a sword. It demands total focus, immense effort, and specific skill. The opposite of this is what he calls shallow work. These are non-cognitively demanding, logistical-style tasks, often performed while distracted. Answering emails, scheduling meetings, posting on social media. These things don't create much new value, and honestly, pretty much anyone can do them. Our modern world has become a factory, churning out shallow work. A 2012 McKinsey study found that the average knowledge worker spends over 60% of their week on electronic communication and internet searching. Nearly a third of their time goes to email alone. This constant state of fragmented attention makes deep work nearly impossible. And here's what's genuinely frightening. Newport argues, backed by solid science, that if you spend enough time in this state of frantic shallowness, you can permanently reduce your capacity for deep work. Your brain, much like a muscle, adapts to how you use it. If you're constantly switching contexts and chasing novel stimuli, your brain gets incredibly good at that, and terribly bad at staying focused on one hard thing. You're essentially training your mind to have an attention deficit. This brings us to the core argument of the entire book, what Newport calls the deep work hypothesis. The ability to perform deep work is becoming increasingly rare, at exactly the same time it's becoming increasingly valuable in our economy. Think about that for a moment. It's classic supply and demand. The supply of deep work is plummeting, while demand for its results is soaring. This means, if you're among the few who can cultivate this skill, you'll absolutely thrive. It'll genuinely feel like you have a superpower. But if this skill is so valuable, why does the world seem designed to destroy it? Why are companies building giant open-plan offices where thousands of employees work in one massive noisy space? Why do we feel this relentless pressure to stay constantly available on email and instant messenger? Newport explains this paradox with a few powerful insights. The first is the principle of least resistance. In business settings where it's hard to measure the real impact of different behaviors on the bottom line, we naturally drift toward what's easiest in the moment. And what's easier? Planning your day intentionally and focusing for hours on a challenging problem, or just keeping your inbox open and reacting to whatever comes in? It's always easier to be reactive. It's easier to feel that satisfying buzz of clearing the inbox, even when none of those emails were truly important. He shares the story of a Harvard professor who ran an experiment with a team at Boston Consulting Group, a high-pressure firm where constant connectivity was considered absolutely essential. The professor forced each team member to take one full day off each week. No email, no calls, completely disconnected. At first, they panicked. They genuinely believed their careers were in jeopardy, that clients would be furious. But something funny happened. The clients didn't care at all. The team members felt happier, communicated better, and most importantly, they delivered a better product to clients. The constant connectivity they thought was essential was actually undermining their performance. The second reason we avoid deep work is that we use busyness as a proxy for productivity. In many knowledge work jobs, what it means to be productive isn't remotely clear. Unlike a factory worker who can point to a stack of widgets they've made, a modern worker's value feels more abstract. So what do? We fall back on what we can actually see. We look busy. We send emails at all hours. We rush frantically from meeting to meeting. We maintain this flurry of activity to prove to ourselves and others that we're earning our keep. Newport contrasts this with the brilliant Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman. Feynman understood that his value came from exactly one thing, doing, quote, real good physics work. To achieve that, he needed long, uninterrupted stretches of time. So he actively cultivated a reputation for being, quote, irresponsible. Whenever anyone asked him to join a committee, he'd simply say no. He knew all those shallow tasks threatened his real work. He had absolute clarity about what mattered, and that clarity gave him equal clarity about what to ignore. But beyond economics and productivity, there's a deeper, more human reason to embrace deep work. It's genuinely the key to a meaningful life. Newport makes this case from three different angles: neurological, psychological, and philosophical. Let's start with your brain. Science writer Winifred Gallagher stumbled upon a profound truth after receiving a diagnosis of particularly aggressive cancer. She realized the disease wanted to monopolize her attention, dragging her into a dark world of fear. She made a conscious decision. She would focus on her life instead. On walks, on movies, on a 6:30 martini. And she discovered that even during the horrors of treatment, her life remained often quite pleasant. This led her to a grand unified theory of the mind. Who you are, what you think, feel, and do, what you love, is the sum of what you focus on. Our brains construct our worldview based on what we pay attention to. If you spend most of your day in the shallow end, responding to emails, dealing with office politics, and scrolling through social media, your brain constructs a world of stress, irritation, frustration, and triviality. The world of your inbox is honestly not a pleasant place to live. But when you spend time in deep work, you're focusing on something meaningful, challenging, and genuinely important. Your mind understands your world as rich and significant. Furthermore, that intense concentration hijacks your attention, preventing you from even noticing the hundreds of smaller, negative things populating our lives. From a neurological perspective, a deep life is a good life. Then there's the psychological argument from legendary psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's famous for researching a state he calls flow. You've probably experienced it before. It's that feeling when you're so immersed in an activity that you completely lose track of time. Your sense of self seems to dissolve. You're just doing. Through decades of research, Csikszentmihalyi discovered something that contradicts conventional wisdom. We usually think relaxation makes us happy. We dream of working less and spending more time on the couch. But his studies showed the opposite. People were often happier at work than during their unstructured free time. Why? Because work, like flow activities, has built-in goals, feedback, and challenges that encourage us to get involved and lose ourselves in it. He found that our best moments usually occur when our body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. Human beings, it seems, are at their best when deeply immersed in something challenging. And deep work is an activity perfectly suited to generating flow. Building your life around the flow produced by deep work is a proven path to deep satisfaction. Finally, there's the philosophical argument. Newport draws on philosophers Hubert Dreyfus and Sean Dorrance Kelly, who argue that in our modern secular world, finding sources of meaning has become increasingly difficult. In the past, meaning came from sacred sources, from connection to something larger than ourselves. But the Enlightenment, for all its benefits, placed the individual at the universe's center. We each became responsible for creating our own meaning, which can feel arbitrary and lead to nihilism. So where can we find meaning today? They point to a surprising answer: craftsmanship. Consider a master craftsman like Rick Furrer, a blacksmith Newport describes, who forges swords using ancient techniques. He spends 8 hours just hammering a single steel ingot into the rough shape of a blade. Every strike is precise, every movement controlled. He says to do it right, it is the most complicated thing I know how to make. And it's that challenge that drives me. I don't need a sword, but I have to make them. The craftsman doesn't invent meaning from thin air. He discovers it in the skillful application of his attention to his craft. The woodworker finds meaning in the wood's grain. The programmer finds it in the code's elegance. The meaning is already there, waiting to be uncovered by someone willing to give it their full, deep attention. This applies to knowledge work just as much as manual trades. Whether you're a writer, marketer, consultant, or scientist, your work is a craft. You don't need a glamorous, world-changing job to find meaning. You just need to approach your work with a craftsman's mindset, and that absolutely requires depth. So the case is crystal clear. Deep work is the key to economic success, personal satisfaction, and a meaningful life. But knowing that isn't enough. You need to build the systems and habits that make it possible. You need to build your own fortress of focus in this distracted world. And that's where we turn now, to the practical rules for making deep work the center of your life. This is the how-to part. This is where you learn to build your superpower. The first step is creating a structure for your deep work. You can't just hope it'll magically happen. You must be intentional. Newport outlines 4 different philosophies or styles for scheduling deep work, and you need to choose the one fitting your life. The first is the monastic philosophy. This is the most extreme. It's for people who try to eliminate or radically minimize shallow obligations altogether. Think of computer science legend Donald Knuth. In 1990, he completely gave up email. He maintains a postal address where an assistant screens his mail, and he deals with it in one batch every 3 months. Or sci-fi author Neil Stephenson, who makes crystal clear on his website that his time and attention are fully spoken for, and politely asks people not to request them. This approach works for people whose value comes from one well-defined, solitary goal. For most of us, this isn't realistic, but it's a powerful ideal worth remembering. The second is the bimodal philosophy. Here you divide your time into clearly defined stretches. For some extended period, you act like a monk, fully immersed in deep work with 0 distractions. The rest of the time, you're open and available. Psychologist Carl Jung perfectly exemplifies this. He had his busy clinical practice and social life in Zurich, but would regularly retreat to his stone tower in Bollingen, where he'd lock himself away to write and think deeply. These deep stretches are usually long, at minimum a full day, often several days or even weeks. This suits people needing both deep focus and significant shallow commitments. The third, and perhaps most practical for many people, is the rhythmic philosophy. This makes deep work a simple, regular habit. The goal is creating a rhythm that removes the need to invest willpower in deciding whether or when you'll do it. The most famous example is Jerry Seinfeld's chain method. He told a young comic that the way to become better is to write better jokes, and the way to do that is writing every day. He gets a big wall calendar, and for every day he writes, he puts a big red X over that day. After a few days you'll have a chain, he explained. Your only job is to not break the chain. This method transforms deep work from a monumental decision into a simple daily routine. Many people use a time-based rhythm, like dedicating the first 90 minutes of every workday, without exception, to their most important deep task. The final approach is the journalistic philosophy. This is for people trained to switch into deep work mode at a moment's notice, whenever they find a pocket of free time. Journalist Walter Isaacson, while writing his massive 800-page book The Wise Men, would disappear into his bedroom for 20 minutes or an hour whenever there was a lull, and you'd hear the typewriter pounding away. Then he'd come back down, just as relaxed as everyone else. This is the hardest approach, because it requires a well-trained attention muscle, but it's incredibly effective for those with chaotic schedules. Once you've chosen your philosophy, you need to support it with rituals. Great creative minds, Newport observes, think like artists but work like accountants. They're systematic. Your ritual should answer a few key questions. Where will you work and for how long? Find a specific place. A quiet library, a conference room, or just your office with the door shut and a do not disturb sign. Giving yourself a specific time frame turns it into a challenge rather than an open-ended slog. How will you work once you start? Set clear rules. For example, a complete ban on internet use. Or a metric, like words produced per 20 minutes. This structure saves you from wasting willpower, deciding what you should and shouldn't be doing. How will you support your work? Your brain needs fuel. Maybe your ritual starts with a good cup of coffee. Maybe it involves ensuring you have a healthy snack and water nearby. It might even involve a short walk to clear your mind before starting. As Nietzsche said, it is only ideas gained from walking that have any worth. Sometimes a simple ritual isn't enough. For a particularly daunting deep work project, you might need to make a grand gesture. This is where we circle back to J.K. Rowling and the Balmoral Hotel. By leveraging a radical change to your environment, coupled with a significant investment of money or effort, you signal to your brain that this task is incredibly important. Bill Gates was famous for his Think Weeks, where he'd retreat to a lakeside cabin with a stack of books and papers to just read and think big thoughts. Peter Shankman, an entrepreneur needing to write a book manuscript in 2 weeks, did something truly wild. He booked a round-trip business-class ticket to Tokyo. He wrote the entire flight there, had an espresso in the lounge, turned around, and wrote the entire flight back. 30 hours later, he landed with a finished manuscript. Sometimes to go deep, you must first go big. But going deep doesn't necessarily mean working alone. Newport points to legendary innovation hubs like MIT's Building 20 and Bell Labs. These places were specifically designed to encourage, quote, serendipitous creativity. They had long hallways forcing people from different disciplines, physicists, chemists, engineers, to bump into each other. But here's the crucial part. They weren't open offices. They were collections of private, soundproofed offices connected by large common areas. This created a hub-and-spoke architecture. You go to the hubs for inspiration and collaboration, but retreat to your spoke to do the deep, focused work required to turn those ideas into breakthroughs. And even in your spoke, collaborative deep work can be powerful. Working with someone on a shared whiteboard can push you deeper than you might go alone. Finally, to truly make deep work a consistent part of your life, you need to execute like a business. Newport adapts a framework called the 4 Disciplines of Execution for personal use. It's a simple but powerful system. Discipline 1. Focus on the wildly important. You can't do everything. Pick 1 or 2 hugely important goals that your deep work will aim at. Publish 5 papers this year, or finish the first draft of my novel. A specific, ambitious goal generates genuine enthusiasm. Discipline 2. Act on the lead measures. Don't just track your outcome, a lag measure, like number of papers published. Track the behavior that drives that outcome. For us, the ultimate lead measure is time spent in deep work. This is something you can control daily. Discipline 3. Keep a compelling scoreboard. People play differently when they're keeping score. Create a simple, visible scoreboard tracking your lead measure. Newport suggests a simple piece of cardstock taped to the wall next to your monitor, with a row for each week where you make a tally mark for every hour of deep work. This creates a satisfying visual of your progress. Discipline 4. Create a cadence of accountability. You need a regular rhythm of reviewing your scoreboard and planning how to improve it. A simple weekly review is perfect. Look at your score, figure out what worked and what didn't, and make a plan for the week ahead to ensure you hit your deep work goals. Now that you have the structure to work deeply, you need to train your mind to actually be able to do it. This is perhaps the most important and overlooked part of the entire process. The ability to concentrate is a skill that must be trained, like a muscle. Newport's second rule is to embrace boredom. He tells the story of Adam Marlin, a man who in his 20s began the Orthodox Jewish practice of studying the Talmud every morning. This practice demands intense mental strain. He discovered that after years of this daily, quote, mental workout, his ability to generate creative insights in his business life absolutely soared. It wasn't the goal, but it was the effect. He had built his, quote, mental muscle. But here's the catch. You can't just train for focus and then spend the rest of your day in constant distraction. That's like an athlete who trains hard at the gym, but eats junk food all day. You need to wean your mind from its dependence on distraction. If every moment of potential boredom, waiting in line, sitting at a red light, is immediately relieved with a quick glance at your phone, you're rewiring your brain to be incapable of deep work. So how do you fight this? The most powerful strategy Newport offers is counterintuitive. Don't take breaks from distraction. Instead, take breaks from focus. Here's how it works. Instead of scheduling time to be offline, you schedule your time to be online. For the rest of the day, internet use is completely banned. Keep a notepad by your computer and write down the next time you're allowed to go online. Until that time, you stay off. This rewires your brain. When you feel that twitch of boredom and the craving for distraction, you don't give in. You resist. That resistance, that 30 minutes of fighting the urge, is a session of concentration calisthenics. A full day of this becomes a full day of mental training. This works even if your job requires lots of internet use. You just schedule more frequent, shorter internet blocks. The key is protecting the integrity of your offline blocks. To build even more intensity, you can work like Teddy Roosevelt. When he was a Harvard student, Roosevelt had an incredible number of extracurricular interests, from boxing to naturalism. He had very little time left for studies. So in the short blocks of time he did have, he worked with ferocious intensity. No breaks, no daydreaming, just pure, teeth-gritting concentration. You can replicate this by giving yourself a hard, artificially short deadline for a deep work task. Set a timer and attack it with everything you've got. It's like interval training for your brain. You can also train your focus while on the move with productive meditation. This means taking a period when you're physically occupied but not mentally, like walking, jogging, or driving, and focusing your attention on a single, well-defined professional problem. It's hard at first. Your mind will want to drift. But like any meditation, the practice is in gently bringing your focus back, again and again. And if you want a truly structured mental workout, try to memorize a deck of cards. Newport explains the memory palace technique used by memory champions. You associate each card with a memorable person or object, then mentally place these images in specific order in rooms of a familiar location, like your house. To recall the deck, you just take a mental walk through your house. The reason this is such a powerful exercise isn't to impress your friends. It's because it requires sustained, structured attention. It's a direct workout for your concentration muscles. With your structure in place and your mind in training, there's one last major battle to fight. Rule 3 is to quit social media. Now, this sounds extreme, but Newport's argument is more nuanced than the title suggests. He starts by identifying the flawed logic most of us use regarding these tools, the any benefit mindset. We justify using a tool if we can identify any possible benefit to its use, or anything we might miss out on if we don't use it. We'll say, I use Facebook to keep up with old friends, or Twitter is good for seeing the news. These benefits are real, but they're usually minor and random. This mindset completely ignores the massive costs of these tools, the time they steal, the attention they fragment, and the addictive way they're engineered. Newport proposes an alternative, the craftsman approach to tool selection. He tells the story of Forrest Pritchard, a sustainable farmer. Pritchard had a hay baler, a machine for making hay. The any benefit logic would say, of course you need a hay baler. You have animals, they need hay. But Pritchard did a more sophisticated analysis. He looked at the costs, fuel, repairs, taxes, but more importantly, he examined the opportunity cost. The time he spent making hay was time he couldn't spend raising chickens, which brought in cash and produced manure enriching his soil. He realized that buying hay from another farm actually brought new nutrients onto his land. His core goal was soil fertility. The hay baler, despite its obvious benefit, worked against that core goal, so he sold it. The craftsman approach is this: identify the core goals that determine success and happiness in your life. Adopt a tool only if its positive impacts on these goals substantially outweigh its negative impacts. To help you apply this, he suggests a powerful exercise. Identify your main high-level goals in your personal and professional life. For each goal, list the 2 or 3 most important activities that help you achieve it. This is based on the law of the vital few, or the 80-20 rule. The idea that in most things, 80% of results come from 20% of effort. These top 2 or 3 activities are your 20%. Now look at a network tool like Twitter or Facebook. Does this tool have a substantially positive impact on any of these crucial activities? For most people, for most of their core goals, the answer is no. Reconnecting with a high school acquaintance on Facebook is a nice minor benefit, but it doesn't substantially support the core activity of, say, having deep, meaningful connections with your closest friends. That requires spending real, quality time with them offline. If you're still not convinced, he suggests a radical experiment inspired by minimalist Ryan Nicodemus, who did a packing party where he boxed up all his possessions and only unpacked what he actually needed over the next few weeks. The social media equivalent is this: quit all your social media accounts for 30 days. Don't announce it, just stop using them. After 30 days, ask yourself 2 questions for each service. Would the last 30 days have been notably better if I had been able to use this service? Did people care that I wasn't using this service? For most people, the answer to both will be a resounding no. You'll realize that the fear of missing out was just that, a fear masterfully marketed to you by companies profiting from your attention. The final piece of the puzzle is to drain the shallows. Even after you've built your deep work habits and quit the most distracting tools, shallow work will still try to creep in and devour your day. This final rule is about taming it for good. First, you need to schedule every minute of your day. This sounds rigid and terrifying, but it's not about constraint. It's about thoughtfulness. At the beginning of each day, take a piece of paper and block out your entire day, from start to finish, in 30-minute chunks. Give every minute a job. Of course, your day will never go exactly as planned. Things will take longer, interruptions will happen. That's perfectly fine. When your schedule breaks, you simply take a minute to create a revised schedule for the rest of the day. The goal isn't sticking to the schedule at all costs. The goal is constantly making an intentional decision about what you're doing with your time. Without a plan, it's too easy for your day to devolve into chaotic, reactive shallowness. Next, you need to get honest about what is and isn't shallow. Newport offers a simple but brilliant test. Quantify the depth of every activity. Ask yourself, how long would it take to train a smart, recent college graduate with no specialized training to complete this task? If the answer is a few months or less, the task is shallow. It doesn't leverage your hard-won expertise. If the answer is many months or years, it's deep. Building a sales presentation? Shallow. Editing a complex academic paper in your field? Deep. This test cuts through the fog of self-importance that can surround our work. Once you know what's shallow, you can ask your boss for a shallow work budget. This is a powerful move. Have a conversation with your boss about what percentage of your time should be spent on shallow work. Settle on a number, maybe 40%. Now you have a clear mandate. When you're asked to take on a shallow commitment that would push you over your budget, you can say no. You can say, I'd love to, but I'm at my capacity for shallow tasks this week, and I need to protect my time for the deep work that drives our most important results. This forces your organization to confront the true cost of shallowness. And finally, perhaps the most life-changing strategy in the whole book: finish your work by 5:30. Newport calls this fixed schedule productivity. You set a firm end time for your workday, then work backward from that constraint to figure out how to get everything important done. This forces a scarcity mindset. When your time is limited, you become ruthless about what you say yes to. You become incredibly efficient and organized. You're forced to aggressively cull the shallow and protect the deep. Newport, a hugely productive professor and author, doesn't work evenings or weekends. He gets more done in less time because the fixed schedule forces him to master depth. And a huge part of this is learning to become hard to reach, especially with email. He offers 3 tips. First, use sender filters. Make people who email you do more work. On his website, he doesn't have a general contact email. He has specific addresses for specific requests, and a special address for interesting opportunities where he makes clear he may not respond. This resets the expectation that every message deserves a reply. Second, use a process-centric approach to replies. When you get a vague email like, "Want to grab coffee?" don't just reply, "Sure, when are you free?" That starts an endless back and forth. Instead, identify the project, schedule a coffee meeting, figure out the most efficient process, and propose it. Great idea. I'm free Tuesday at 1, or Thursday at 2 at the Starbucks on Main. If either works, let me know and I'll consider it confirmed. If not, give me a call and we'll sort it out. This closes the loop and saves immense time and mental energy. And third, don't respond. He learned from famous MIT professors that their default behavior is not replying. It's the sender's job to convince them a reply is worthwhile by making a clear, compelling, and easy-to-process request. Develop the habit, as author Tim Ferriss says, of letting small bad things happen. This is the path. It's a journey from a life of distracted frenzy to a life of focused meaning. It's not easy. It requires you to swim against the current of our entire culture. But the rewards are immeasurable. As we reach the end of our journey through deep work, I want to take a moment to reflect on what we've really learned here. This book, on the surface, might seem like a manual for getting more done. But if you've been listening closely, you know it's something much more profound. What Cal Newport has given us isn't just a productivity system. It's a philosophy for living a life of purpose and craftsmanship in an age that seems determined to strip those things away. It's a declaration of independence for your mind. The most powerful lesson for me is the simple but revolutionary idea that a deep life is a good life. We live in a culture celebrating the shiny and the new, the fast and the frequent. We're taught to believe that being connected equals being important, that being busy equals being productive. Deep work calls that entire belief system into question. It reminds us that the most rewarding experiences in our lives, both professionally and personally, come from sustained, focused attention. Think about learning a musical instrument, mastering a sport, having a conversation that changes your perspective, or creating something you're truly proud of. None of these things happen in a state of distraction. They all require you to shut out the world and go deep. Newport argues that we should build our entire lives around these moments, not treat them as rare exceptions. This is a radical act of rebellion in today's world. The platforms and tools we use every day aren't neutral. They're designed by some of the smartest minds of our generation with a single goal: to capture and hold as much of your attention as possible so they can sell it to advertisers. When you choose to cultivate your ability to focus, you're reclaiming your time, your attention, and in a very real sense, your life from these forces. You're choosing to be the master of your own mind rather than letting it be manipulated by algorithms. So how can you start today? It can feel overwhelming, I know. But you don't have to become a monk overnight. Here are 3 simple, practical actions you can take right now to begin your journey into the deep life. First, tonight, at the end of your workday or school day, I want you to perform a shutdown ritual. Look at your to-do list, your email, your notes. Make a rough plan for tomorrow. Once you're confident that everything is captured, and you won't forget anything important, close your computer and say out loud, "Shutdown complete," and then be done. Truly done. No email checks. No thinking about work. Feel the freedom of that clear boundary. Second, before you go to bed tonight, take 5 minutes and schedule your entire day for tomorrow. Take a piece of paper and block out your time, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. Be intentional. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it'll probably change, but the act of making a plan is an act of taking control. And third, the next time you find yourself waiting, in line at the grocery store, for a friend to arrive, for the bus, I want you to embrace the boredom. Resist the urge to pull out your phone. Just stand there, look around, let your mind wander. It'll feel uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is the feeling of your attention muscles getting their first workout. It's the beginning of you rewiring your brain for depth. That was a summary of Deep Work by Cal Newport. We've explored the core ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. The real magic happens when you decide to take the journey yourself. It's in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This podcast is here to help you decide if this journey is one you want to take. If anything we've talked about today has sparked something in you, if you feel that pull toward a more focused, more meaningful way of living, then I urge you to grab a copy of the book. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see your work, your time, and your life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring the ideas that have shaped the most successful minds in the world, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book. Let's keep growing together.